just woke up in the middle of the night remembering this and needed to get it off my chest. When I was about 16, my father, brothers, and I lived in an old rundown house in the middle of nowhere. It was a private rental. My brother would do work for the landlord to pay our rent. Our landlord never came off as particularly creepy, but that could be because I rarely went outside when he came over to talk to my dad, and he wouldn't dare do anything in front of my father. I was home alone one day. My dad and brothers went out somewhere, I don't remember exactly where, and I had my dog in a fenced-in yard outside, but that was it. I was in my room doing whatever I was doing, probably playing The Sims 2, and we lived in the middle of nowhere, and there was a long driveway which the window of my bedroom directly faced. I couldn't see or hear anyone driving up the driveway. I saw a car, not my dad's, and kind of immediately freaked out. I ran and shut all the blinds in the house and turned off all the lights and checked the doors, making sure that they were locked. It was our landlord. He lived next door about 2 miles from our house, and yes, that was the closest house. This wasn't the first time that he'd come here unexpectedly. It happened twice before, and both times I was home alone. Those first 2 times he was only there for 10 minutes, walking around the outside of the house and then quickly leaving, but this time was different. I grabbed a big kitchen knife and hid under the kitchen table. I heard him pull up outside and open our front gate. My dog outside was going crazy and barking, and I heard him yell, "Shut up, you mutt." And I could hear his footsteps walking up to the door. He tried to open the front door, and I was freaking out. At this point, I texted my dad, and he was coming straight home, but they'd be like an hour. He continued to walk around the outside of our house, trying to peek into each window. The house is old and has 3 doors that you can enter from the outside, and he tried to open all 3. I thought maybe that he didn't know that I was home. Maybe the last 2 times were just a coincidence, but he started saying things, including calling out my name, and he knew that I was home alone. I couldn't hear what else he was saying through the double brick walls, but I quietly creeped through the house following his voice up and down the hallway. I was trying to hear what he was saying, and that's when he said something that I'll never forget. "I'm gonna burn this house down, but I'll let you out first." Of course, I didn't take him seriously, which scares me even more. He wanted me to come out. He wanted me to take his threat seriously. And that's the part that gets me. I know exactly what would have happened if I had believed him, and my life would have been completely different. He was there for at least a half an hour, maybe closer to an hour, and he was very persistent, and he left before my dad came home. I told him everything, and we moved out soon after. I still don't know how he knew that I was home alone, and my dad never saw him on the way driving out, so he knew my dad was gone because there was no car in the driveway. But how did he know I wasn't with him? And why did he act like that? I live in a very rural area in Tennessee, and this happened either in the summer of 92 or 93, so I was a preteen, and I can still see this in my mind like it happened yesterday. Like I said before, a rural area in Tennessee where we used to have some serious issues with people dumping unwanted, worn-out items and garbage down on our beautiful hillsides and ravines. At that time, it was common to find illegal dumping sites everywhere because there was no bulk pickup offered by our one waste disposal monopoly. And in this part of the state, the economic disparity is obvious. You have some of the poorest people and some multiple mansion and vacation home folks. My family fell somewhere in the upper middle class. Thinking Titanic, we would be in either the lowest rung of first class or the very top of second class. Unfortunately, the majority would be in steerage or the coal bunker. Well, it was August in Tennessee, aka sun-scorching heat and enough humidity to make it slightly uncomfortable to breathe. Many describe it as the swamp-ass capital of the state. Anyway, we had just had an extraordinarily rare murder in our county. It was all that anyone was talking about, and it was all you heard in our churches and beauty salons. The victim was largely unknown, a woman in her early 30s and nowhere near wealthy. I didn't know her, nor did anyone. She had just moved here less than a year ago and kept to herself and had not been reported missing. Then just before our summer break came to an end, this lady was found at the base of a steep incline, deep in one of our densely wooded areas by some folks out for a nature hike. And there she was found, at the base of a large illegal dump on a winding dirt road that was barely wide enough for one vehicle. If you ever met another car, one would have to pull over so far you were almost off the road entirely. Even creepier, the road was named Bone Road. Yeah. When she was found, she had lost everything from the neck up, but both her upper and lower areas were recovered, and her killer had not been caught. So my mom was born and raised here and was of a strong yet goofy stock. She had always been my best buddy, even when dropping the hammer on my brother and me, and she was loved by every student that she had ever taught. Our friends adored my goofy mama and often telling me how lucky I was to have her. My dad was a pharmacist in our area, smarter than most, and happy to go fill a lost or forgotten prescription even late into the night. My dad isn't from here, but is very well known because of his job. Everyone knows my mama because she and most of our huge family have been here since our ancestors settled here in the 1800s. The rest of her family lived in Middle Tennessee. On that day in August, we had been in a family reunion picnic at the beautiful naturally made lake that we lived near. Suddenly, a scattered thunderstorm had popped up and brought our get-together to an end. It was just me and my mom, but on the ride home, we decided that we were Sherlock Holmes and Watson. We wanted to see the crime scene. I know, brilliant. My dad was at work and my brother was with a friend, and this was 92 or 93, so no GPS, Alexa, Siri, or Google Earth, not even MapQuest. My dad was on our school board and had been given a highly detailed map of our entire county. Since neither of us knew how to reach Bone Road, it was agreed that the map would be our guide. We went home, grabbed the map, and set out like we were Magellan, and we eventually found the place and headed to the spot. Being the ignorant rubberneckers that we were, we just planned to drive past this stupid dump site. I can't explain how creepy this place was, though. A murder dump in the middle of BFE, on a road that started with blacktop, transitioned to gravel, and then good old dirt. It was mid-afternoon, but the sudden rain on the August ground made the area steamy. Literal steam was emanating from the road, the fields, the woods, and everywhere, and that just added to the thrill of our folly. And as we approached the location, there was a blind curve, making it impossible to see the place until we were right up on it. When we rounded that corner, we saw that we weren't alone. A very dirty man had his very dirty truck pulled over at the dump just far enough to allow us to pass. Sure, Joe Dirt could have been just another looky-loo like us, but he gave off a creepy vibe. Just standing by his truck, looking down into the dump site, it wasn't a sheriff's officer, and we know all our local authorities, and they had cleared the location a day or so before. Anyone could access the area. And as we squeezed past his truck, he was standing on the passenger side of our car. I'm 12 or 13, I can't drive, so he was on my side as we passed, so close to him that I could see his 2 teeth clear as day. He just smiled in his uber creeptastic, almost leering way. Not nice and not friendly. We got past and thanked the Lord that Mr. Two-Tooth hadn't followed us, and we agreed that we could reach the end of Bone Road and just get the hell out of there. Oh, there's a but. We reached the end of Bone Road, ending at a field, and Bone Road was a dead end, no pun intended. My mom said the words that I had been screaming in my head. Oh, F. We had no choice. We had to do a 5-point turn to go back from where we came. Oh, I bet he's gone now, my mom's feeble attempt to soothe us both. And guess what? He was still there, still smiling his huge 2-tooth smile. And now as my adult self reflected on this, he could have come after us, knowing that we would be cornered, but neither of us have ever been accused of being too rational. We made it out unscathed, of course, and my dad hit the roof when he heard the tapestry of idiocy our afternoon adventure was. But there's always a but. Days later, our newspaper heralded the good news that murderer was caught. The woman had been killed by a boyfriend-turned-stalker. She had moved here from a town about 45 minutes away to get away from him, but he had found her. He just drove around with her body in his truck before happening upon this dump site. Happily ever after? Not quite. And as we stared down at this guy's mugshot, it was real. Mr. Two-Tooth was her killer. We never told my dad that part. Mr. Two-Tooth was convicted of first-degree murder and abuse of a corpse. He'll die in the state prison system serving life with no parole. Still, Mom and I promised that we would never be so dumb again. We still have weird adventures, but not to freaky remote murder dump sites on unknown terrain and with no one knowing where we are. We really could have met our literal dead end. It's an odd thing, knowing that you had been face to face with a brutal murderer, not once, but twice. Admittedly, I've been a lurker on the sub for a few years now. I've tried to type out my story numerous times, but always struggled to wade through the pieces as they gotten more and more jumbled and foggy with time. And I can't say that I was traumatized by what happened. I'm not sure if it makes me a messed up person, but I typically tell this story at parties to manipulate drunk acquaintances into thinking that I've survived something cool. So, let's get into it. In 2015, I was 19 and working the summer at a Bible camp for inner city kids. I'm going to leave out the city name, but just know that obviously crime occurs frequently in big cities, and this one was no different. I had been assured that this neighborhood, however, was in the process of being gentrified, and they had even just opened up a hipster coffee shop/dog park right down the street. And just to give you a really clear visual, this neighborhood had dilapidated houses with trash out in the front right next to the houses with immaculate yards and square modern architecture. The Bible camp where I was working was essentially just a huge 2-story house with a large fenced-in yard. Again, we were assured that we were safe, though, because we had bars on the windows and the outer doors locked automatically when they shut. The camp was conducted downstairs, and the summer counselors, there were 4 of us, lived in the small upstairs that was off-limits during the day to the kids. Our camp ran 5 days a week, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m., then time was ours to explore the city or rest or whatever. Probably enough to get to the story now. I love a good setting, and it could be important later. Now, one weekend night in July, we were all just hanging out in the house and making a spaghetti dinner. We each got our own stipend for food, so we divided it accordingly for meals, then brought our own snacks and stuff. We were also in charge of preparing lunch and snacks for the kids on camp days, so we had 2 fridges and 2 pantries. And as you can probably guess, we labeled them camp fridge and pantry, and one is labeled staff fridge and pantry. We also were super petty and wrote out our names all over our snacks in the fridge. My best friend worked at the camp with me, and we'll call her Chris, and it was our turn to cook that night, so I went into the staff fridge to grab the ground beef. I immediately noticed that my case of Go-Gurts is gone. They were my go-to snack, and I brought like 3 cases a week. I had just opened my last box like an hour before to have one and left it in front of the ground beef, and it sounds crazy, but I knew I did. I closed the fridge door and head to the dining room, and Chris is closely behind me and yell at everyone, "Who stole all my Go-Gurt?" And that night, in addition to Chris and myself, there were the 2 other summer counselors, 2 permanent counselors that live in the area, and then the cousin of one of the permanent counselors. Everyone looked at me wide-eyed, then looked around blankly. I figured it was the cousin because I had never met her before, so I sucked it up and said, "Whatever. Just, if it has a name on it, please don't eat it." And then pull Chris back into the kitchen to finish up the spaghetti. We all eat dinner, and then the 2 permanent counselors volunteer to do the dishes because we let them eat with us. And the rest of us head back upstairs to get comfy in the sitting room on the couches and turn on Family Guy. We're only like 2 minutes in when the cousin, we'll call her Sarah, says, "Wait, I can't find my phone or wallet." I pause the show and roll my eyes, still annoyed about the Go-Gurt, and Chris says, "Where did you last have them?" And Sarah says she left them on the couch before we went downstairs to have dinner. Naturally, we all start looking around the small room, turning over couch cushions, looking under the couches, behind them, under blankets, really wherever. And finally, we're like, "Are you sure you didn't leave them downstairs?" She agrees to head downstairs to look with the other 2 and Chris, and I go into our room, which is connected to the sitting room. And we flop down on the bottom of our bunk bed, and I proceeded to talk crap about Sarah, who I feel like is kind of ruining our chill night. Our door is open, and I'm shocked when I see a hand kind of sneak into view like it's going to grab the door frame. I say, "Hey, did you find them?" thinking that Sarah or the other 2 have somehow made it back upstairs without me hearing them and having heard me talking crap for the past 5 minutes. But the hand immediately disappears out of the door frame, and there's no response. I look at Chris like, "What the hell is that?" and she's looking back at me confused because she never saw the hand. I quickly explain what happened, and then we both jump up and head to the top of the stairs. We yell down for the others, and they yell back that they haven't found them yet. And by this point, I'm freaked out because who is up here with us? Of course we're those people, though, and we start looking around upstairs in our bedroom, the other bedroom, and the sitting room, and we find nothing and no one. We decide not to say anything yet because I might sound insane, and also, could someone have gotten downstairs so fast without us hearing them? When we get downstairs, Sarah is super upset and crying, and her cousin says, "Come on, guys, did someone take her stuff?" But Chris and I both knew that we didn't, and we say so. Sarah screams that obviously someone took them and we should just be honest, and then things get heated. I finally decide then to tell them about the hand because I feel like it might reduce the tension between us. And it does, but then everyone panics. We run around the house like maniacs looking in every closet or hiding space that the kids use and find nothing and no one. And we end up calling our camp director to come over because the situation has just devolved into chaos. When he gets there, we're all sitting huddled in the foyer, freaked out, and we explain what we can. He just doesn't seem convinced that someone was in the house and threatens to call the cops if one of us doesn't give Sarah back her things. Well, none of us fesses up, so we call the cops, and they come over and search the property and take our statements. It seems so dumb as we repeat our stories, but we didn't have much to go off of but a feeling. They do write a report for stolen property, and that makes Sarah feel at least a little better. With the house secure, everyone leaves except us 4 summer counselors who live there. We spend the night in the same room with the door barricaded, reassuring ourselves that we're being stupid and the phone and wallet will actually turn up somewhere random and we'll just laugh about it. Fast forward a few days, we've relaxed a bit and we haven't found Sarah's things like we expected, but nothing else weird has happened and we've been occupied with the kids and the job in general. The kids have all gone home at this point and it's just the 4 of us again in the house. We finish cleaning up outside, lock the gate, and head into the dining room door. We're all hungry and we want snacks, and Chris gets to the kitchen first and says, "Hey, someone left the kitchen door open again." I mean, it's kind of weird, but kids go in and out of that door all day, so of all the doors to be open, this is the least weird. She shuts it, and then I notice that the staff fridge door is also cracked open. And then who knows what possessed me, but I go, "Oh no, y'all, he's back." And we all laugh because we think this is ridiculous, and Chris grabs a broom, holds it as a weapon, and says, "Let's get him, girls." She starts to throw open the pantry door, screaming, "Where you at? And we know you're in here, show yourself." I'm following behind her laughing, but I start to inexplicably feel uneasy and nervous, and she continues her charade into the next room, throwing open 2 more closet doors, and then moves into the front room and opens that closet door. She starts another confident, "We know you're..." when she stops mid-sentence and screams so loudly that the skin on my neck prickles. She then throws the broom into the closet and sprints out of the front door, leaving it open. And my heart is pounding so hard at this point, but I'm thinking she's messing with us, so I turn around and go the other way into the foyer and out the front door. I see her booking it down the street towards the coffee shop, and I'm like, okay, what is she doing? As soon as I turn back around to find the others, he's just there. An older man, looks really dirty, has hardly any teeth, and he's just grinning at me. He has his hands up and says, I didn't mean no harm," while slowly backing down the street in the other direction. It's so creepy because even though he says it like that, it doesn't seem like he means it. It's like his tone and the grin are mocking me, and I'm frozen for a second, then I sputter out, "You can't just leave." And he just says again with a goddamn grin, "I didn't mean no harm," and then turns and runs. I fumble in my pocket for my phone and dial 911, then go to follow him, but as soon as I reach the edge of the house, he's gone. Next events are kind of a blur. Sounds wild, but we really all thought that we just freaked ourselves out. No way in hell did we actually think someone was in the house. And the cops took our statements and reminded us that we needed to keep the door shut at all times no matter what. Our director apologized profusely for initially not believing us, and my parents wanted me to come back home for the remainder of the summer, but I was like, what else could happen? Chris was the one who had it worse, though. She was terrified to stay in that house, and she told me later that when she opened the door, he was just grinning at her with these sort of dead eyes, like he was waiting for her to finally find him. She said that she'll never forget his face. Now, we're still best friends at almost 30, and I can't bring up that summer to her if she hasn't been drinking. And that's basically it. I think what kept me up at night after that were just the unanswered questions. Like, how long had he been in the house? Why did he randomly decide to take the phone and wallet of the one person who didn't work there? Had he listened to our private conversations, watched us get dressed and showered? How much food had he stolen that we didn't notice? And where had he gone when we were looking for him on spaghetti night? What hiding places did we miss? Was he under my bed at night or at any point during my stay? I don't know all these answers, and I'll know I'll never have them, but I guess I'm just thankful our interaction wasn't worse. I'm 22 years old. We used to have a neighbor who was around 60 to 70 years old, and he died a few years ago. When he was still alive, he would cause us so much trouble. Scratched our car, poisoned our apple trees and grass, blew up a firework near me to cause me to temporarily go deaf on one ear when I was like 4, all kinds of things. His son was a judge in our city, so pretty much everything we took to court was against us. And I remember Dad often called us from work to tell us not to be alone at home, and we would have to stay at Grandma's. When I was little, I think about 6 or 7, I would frequently have nightmares about seeing a face outside the bathroom window. The window is above our bathtub. It's high enough that no one can actually see in unless they climb the roof on our shed, which is underneath the bathroom window in our garden. Coincidentally, the shed is directly next to a fence that separates our garden from the neighbor's one. I still remember the dreams. I remember having them pretty much every other night, and I never told my parents when I was little because we never really talked about anything, so I didn't really share anything that was happening to me. Well, I grew up thinking that they were just dreams and that was it. I did mention them to my therapist last year because we were discussing some personal problems, and I felt like this was kind of connected. After coming home, Mom asked me what I talked about with my therapist, so I finally shared that I used to have such dreams. I never really thought about them being real, but she told me that I actually did tell her that I saw our neighbor on our shed's roof. I don't remember telling her that, but she said that I did mention it several times, and even my friends told her that they saw him there when they came over to our house and it really creeped them out. Apparently I never mentioned him watching me in the shower, but after she told me that, it really clicked for me, and it was as if I suddenly remembered that, yeah, I do think it was him. It would make sense, and the fact that it happened still creeps me out. There was another incident that creeped me out too, and it happened when I was around 9 to 10. I went to the balcony in the evening, and the balcony door was in my room, and I often went there to call my cat home in the evening. But this time I saw a person standing in the middle of our garden. It was already dark out, and I couldn't really tell who it was. I waited for a little bit to see what the person does, but I didn't really see him move. It was as if he was just standing there and staring in front of him. I called out, "Dad?" because obviously I expected it to be him, even though I found it odd. But the person looked up at me, and even though it was dark, I could tell it was someone else. I think it was partly because my eyes had just adjusted to the dark and I could make out the silhouette of the person better. And I went to tell my dad, who was downstairs, but when he looked, there was no one there. When I went back upstairs to my room and went to the balcony again, I noticed my neighbor's back door closing just when I looked there. I don't remember if it was directly the next day or a few days later, but our grass turned brown and we found out it was poisoned, most of the grass being out of reach from his property. I went to a wedding of my friend Courtney about 2 days ago, and I still can't shake my mind over what happened. For context, I grew up in a very religious household and went to a church every Sunday, and Courtney is probably the only person from my old church that I still keep in contact with. The situation started at the reception. Courtney was super excited to see me and was definitely the only person who felt that way, judging from all the stares from the people at my old church. I sat down at my table and started playing something on my phone when some guy sat next to me. He said that the seating chart said that he was supposed to sit at my table and introduced himself as the groom's friend, Anthony. He was pretty cute, so I spent a lot of time talking to him and we really hit it off. He didn't seem to judge me for being an atheist and seemed genuinely interested in me. When the dance started, they started playing Brown Eyed Girl and he offered to dance with me. And we danced together for most of the night until we left to go to the bathroom, and a little later I did too. When I came out, I saw that my purse wasn't on the table, which was weird because I swore that I left it on there. I was tired and thought that I had just left it in my car, so I went to the parking lot and into my car to look for it and found it was on the center console. I still thought it was weird because I really thought that I had brought it inside, but at that point it was really late in the night, so I didn't think much of it. I danced some more and noticed that Anthony was gone. I asked the groom, who said that he had gone home because he wasn't feeling too good. And pretty soon, I felt pretty sick too, so I said bye to Courtney and went to my car. As I put my keys into the ignition, I looked behind me and saw something weird. It looked like someone had ducked down from the trunk. I took my keys out and looked back there, and that's when I saw him. Anthony was crouched down in the trunk of my car. I started screaming and ran out with him chasing after me. I went inside and told Courtney, who immediately told her husband, who walked me back to my car where Anthony was nowhere to be seen. Courtney's husband said that he didn't see his car anywhere, so he probably left. And I left, and I still felt sick to my stomach thinking about it. He could have easily gone home with me and killed me if I hadn't looked back. Courtney said that she feels terrible that she invited him and that she had no idea that he would do something like that. And I haven't stepped out of my house since because I'm worried that if I do, that he'll be waiting for me like he was before. Now, update. The last couple of days have been kind of crazy, so I haven't had the chance to look, but thank you all for your advice that I wish I'd have known about earlier. Unfortunately, my address was on my ID, and as I learn now, Anthony took photos of it. Anthony and the groom aren't exactly friends, but they know each other well enough for him to be invited. After the whole fiasco, the groom tried to text Anthony about it but got no response. Anthony showed up at my job and lurked around the parking lot before he ran off when he saw security. And he left me a note on my windshield that was just saying something like, "Watching." Security at my job had been notified about him, so hopefully I'm safe there, and I was told by other people that went to the wedding that he was introducing himself as my boyfriend and that he was planning on proposing. I'm currently trying to file a restraining order against this guy, but I just feel horrified. He lives in my city and knows where I live, so I'm staying in my aunt's house as I speak. And if anything happens, I'll update again. So this actually happened about 2 hours ago. I, a 26-year-old female, and my boyfriend, 36 years old, decided to go to the store to get oil. We had to drive 45 minutes to a European store located in a rough part of the city, but it's the only place that carries the exact foods I grew up with. My family and I are from Ukraine, but we now live in the US. It's challenging to find authentic stores that have exactly what we used to eat, and this is the only place I've found that even has the same brands. And as we're driving, we were on a 3-lane road and needed to get into one of those midsection U-turn lanes. We moved into our left turn lane, and suddenly, a black car sped from the far right lane, cutting through the middle lane and nearly hit us as it forced its way into our lane. My boyfriend and I were shocked, and then the car stopped at a green light meant for the U-turn. My boyfriend gently honked twice just in case they were distracted to let them know that it was their turn to go. They moved forward, and we turned into the parking lot directly to our right, heading to the store we needed. However, the car just cut us off and then swerved across 2 more lanes and drove onto the sidewalk, entering the same parking lot and started tailgating us aggressively while laying on the horn. My boyfriend decided to drive a bit further into the lot rather than parking directly in front of the store. At that moment, I realized that his car camera, which usually records the front and back while driving, wasn't on. I tapped it, thinking that it would start recording, but it didn't. We realized that it had somehow disconnected from the car. As my boyfriend was trying to plug it back in, the black car pulled up next to us. I saw 3 young men, probably around 18 to 20 years old, inside. They were all African American, and the driver rolled down his window and started reaching for something, and I panicked, screaming at my boyfriend, "Just drive, go, go." He slammed on the gas, and we sped off with the black car still following us. My boyfriend suddenly started doing donuts in the parking lot, trying to shake off, while I was screaming, "Oh my God, call the police, I need to call the police." And I managed to dial 911 just as my boyfriend finished the last donut and began driving out of the lot. The black car continued chasing us until we got about 3 to 4 blocks away from a police station. The 911 operator asked where we were, and in my panic, I stuttered, trying to describe our location. My boyfriend, who used to drive for Uber and knows the streets well, shouted out the road as we were passing. The black car kept following us until they probably realized where we were headed and suddenly swerved off onto a random road. At some point, the call disconnected, but the officer called me right back and stayed on the line with us until we arrived at the station. We explained what happened, and the officer was kind, and he even offered to escort us back to the store in case those guys were still around. We showed him the skid marks in the lot, and he joked about them, and everything was all good. He did some paperwork while we were quickly grabbing the sunflower oil that I wanted, and my boyfriend tried some authentic Slavic ice cream for the first time, which he agreed was much better than American ice cream. We decided to cut our day short and thanked that officer and went home. My boyfriend said that he was amazed at how quickly I made the right decisions and was surprised I even called the police because he knows I have a history of being assaulted by 2 on-duty officers 4 years ago, which has left me terrified of calling or speaking to the police. But in that moment, I was so scared of getting shot, and my only priority was to have the police there to keep my boyfriend safe if something happened to him. I was so terrified that my chest actually hurt, and I'm so happy that we're safe now. My boyfriend was now laughing, saying he can finally prove that front-wheel drive Dodge cars can do great donuts. One evening, I was out in Lacey, Washington to pick up a handgun that I had recently purchased for protection. Contrary to the pickup status both online and sent to my email, the store didn't have it in stock yet and told me to come back in another week. I lived about an hour from Lacey at the time, and when I had gotten there, evening rush hour was just beginning to become unbearable. I didn't want to drive all the way back home just yet, as it would add an additional hour to my already long commute. Side note, the car that I was driving belonged to my dad, and I was borrowing it until I had enough money saved up for a new car after my beloved Honda had broken down the previous year. I killed some time bumming around the store that I had purchased my firearm from, and then decided to drive over to the nearest coffee shop. It was a newly built cabin-style cafe with a modern twist. The barista handed me my 16-ounce dirty chai, and I walked back out to my car. I then drove to a gas station around the corner, still trying to kill time until traffic thinned out. The car didn't need gas, so I pulled into a parking spot right at the corner of the 4-way intersection where the gas station was located. I turned off the engine, stepped outside, and lit a cigarette, leaning against the driver's side door to avoid stinking up the interior. The weather was overcast and drizzly, but not overly cold. It was dusk, and most of the daylight had faded. The stoplights at the intersection were diffused by the late autumn mist, and I watched them flicker from green to yellow to red and black again as the traffic moved in sync with their signals. Zoned out by the lights and generally lost in thought while enjoying my coffee and smoke, I didn't notice the man walking toward me until he was already halfway across the street. He was a white guy of average height and strawberry blonde hair, perhaps in his mid-20s. He definitely hadn't changed his clothes in a while and carried a backpack that I assume held the few belongings that he had. He didn't smell, but he looked raggedy and unkempt. My immediate thought was that drugs were likely part of his lifestyle. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but I'm always cautious, having grown up in the suburbs of Seattle. The man finished crossing the street and awkwardly limped toward my car, maintaining eye contact and a strained grin. I locked my car out of caution but remained outside, smoking casually. Normally I'm a social person, but I don't go out of my way to be unpleasant either. He approached me and stood about 10 feet away when he said hello and asked if I had a light. I hesitated, but saw no harm in fulfilling this very simple request. Taking 2 steps forward, I lit his cigarette, which he held out toward me as he approached. He attempted to make small talk, weaving in hints that he had just gotten off the bus and still needed to go another block down the road. Somewhere in his poorly crafted sob story, he stopped mid-sentence, kind of like a bad actor, and pretended to be struck by an epiphany. "Hey, would you mind just dropping me off down the road? It's not very far." I apologized and said I couldn't help because it was my dad's car, not mine, and I didn't feel comfortable driving it without his permission. A stupid but plausible excuse that I came up with on the spot. Mr. Unkempt did not like my answer, and his smile immediately turned tense and flatlined. Clearly upset, he became more insistent. "It's just down the road," he whined. "My leg is killing me. It wouldn't even be far for you. I'll give you a cigarette." His persistence and sudden burst of hostility made my hair stand on end, and I firmly said, "No, I'm sorry. I can't help you. It's my dad's car, and he's got set rules, all right?" With 10 years of hospitality experience under my belt, I immediately offered him alternative ideas for how he could get to where he needed to be. I even suggested that maybe someone inside the gas station could help him out or call him a ride. Each word I said made him increasingly irate, and he began curling his fingers into fists, not in a threatening way, but like a toddler about to scream bloody murder for not getting their way. He seemed to pause and size me up for a very fleeting moment. I'm small and not at all intimidating physically, so I told him that I hoped he made it home safe, quickly unlocked my car, jumped in and locked myself inside. When I looked up from locking the car door, I saw him speed walking back across the street, heading in the direction that he originally come from. No limp, no awkward walk whatsoever, no distress or pain even showing slightly, just the normal speed walk of a physically well person, a very rage-filled person. I know I had dodged a bullet there, and I felt pretty dumb for hanging around the city after dark alone, and at this point I didn't care about traffic anymore, so I started the engine and hightailed it home in what ended up being an hour and 45-minute drive. But this time the traffic was 100% worth the inconvenience. And PSA, if you haven't heard it enough already, be careful who you give your attention to, especially when you're alone. Stay aware at all times and err on the side of caution, even when strangers seem harmless at first. So today, as I was going out for coffee, I decided to check out a new cafe that just opened. As I approached the door, I was surprised and happy to see an ex-girlfriend of mine from when I was a kid. We stared at each other for a second, and then I saw her mumble something before coming toward me. I went in for a hug, and after we greeted, she simply asked, "Do you remember what you did to me?" And I was baffled. We had dated many years ago and never had any issues of any kind. No major fights, no abuse, no toxicity. In fact, she left me because I wouldn't commit, but we remained on good terms for a while afterward, still hanging out until she found a job abroad and left. At first, I was scared out of my mind and immediately sensed something very strange. I asked her to be more specific, but she wasn't forthcoming, and after a little chit-chat, she told me that she was referring to the time when my friend and I cleansed her house. It then came back to me at the time, we were some stupid, edgy, semi-goth kids who were really into weird and otherworldly stuff. And after she complained about her house feeling strange, a friend from our group offered to perform a cleansing ritual, which he did while we were basically half drunk. According to her, when she talked about this years later with other people, things started to go wrong. She began to feel a presence around the house, experience drops in temperature, all that eerie stuff. She was vague, but apparently she believes some kind of ghost is now haunting her house, something that was unleashed after the ritual and started manifesting after she mentioned it to her friends. Nothing happened in years prior. She eventually returned to England, but promptly came back here to escape from an abusive fiancé. At that point, I was really nervous and made an excuse to leave, and she hugged me, said there is now only Christ in her heart, and suggested that we should really have a cup of coffee. And this gave me a really weird vibe, like something from a cult. I basically ran away, terrified. Keep in mind, we split on some very good terms. She looked after my dog while I was in England. As a masseuse, she took care of my bad back for months. She even introduced me to her new boyfriend, and we went out for dinner a couple of times as a group. There's no way that she could have held any animosity toward me. In fact, once she was abroad, she even offered to help me find a job in the city where she was living. This was not a prank to get back at me. And more than that, her eyes. She was once the light of the room, always laughing and cracking jokes. But the person I saw today was sad, with very still eyes, not smiling or anything, like a completely different person. My earliest memory of a nightmare turned out to be a real event. So that title sounds like a no-sleep story, and that's the first thing I thought when I first found this out about 2 months ago. I've been busy dealing with the wake of a family tragedy since then, but now that things are returning to the new normal, I figured it's a good time to share this, and I'm sorry in advance for any formatting issues here. Now first, I'll describe the nightmare. It's a very short dream. Like I said, it's a very clear memory just because of how scary it was. I was about 4 or 5 years old, perhaps 6 at the most, and my twin brother and I had a bunk bed in a room at the furthest end of the house that we grew up in. The nightmare had me in my bed looking out the window to see a red sky, the kind it gets in the early dawn hours before sunrise, but light still colors the sky. And the next and only other thing I remember in this nightmare is that a man with crazy blue-colored eyes and a bald head appears at the window and stares right at me. The nightmare ends there, but I remember just how much I screamed and screamed about it. I don't know where my brother was at the time when I woke up screaming, and the only thing I can remember from when I woke up was having my mom come and get me and calm me down as she took me to her bedroom down the hall. I remember that event so well because I wondered where my dad was at the time. Now fast forward to this May, and my father is in a hospital in Colombia, the country where he lives. My twin brother, our older sister, and I are staying in a hotel about a 5-minute walk from the hospital where he's in the ICU. One night, after a long day of being there for Dad and the extended family, my siblings and I return to the hotel, sit together to have a couple of beers, and try to relax after everything. We start discussing things, just trying to unwind, and somehow the topic of nightmares and dreams comes up. I bring up the story above, and without missing a beat, my sister explains that it really happened. That some guy really did look through my window and she remembers the whole thing. My sister, who is 5 years older than my brother and I, which would make her 9 or 10 years old at the time, had a bedroom adjacent to the room my brother and I shared. Her room faced our front lawn and the street, while our room faced the neighbor's house in their driveway, with a very low fence between the two houses. While she didn't go into too much detail about the days before this nightmare/event, she said that she had been followed by a bald man in a truck as she rode her bike home with some friends a couple of times before. The day immediately before this nightmare was no different, but this time the man actually drove right past the house. At the time, she was a latchkey kid since my brother and I had to attend a special school about 45 minutes away from our hometown for a speech impediment that many twins have, and my mom had to pick us up rather than be home for my sister's after school. However, she was never home alone for more than an hour. That afternoon and evening were pretty normal as she remembers it. My dad came home from his job. He worked part-time as a cop in a local hardware store, and we all had dinner, did homework, played, and did the usual family things before bed. That night, at around 12 to 1 a.m., this bald-headed man parked down the street at a small industrial park, walked up to our house, and tried to get in through my sister's window, which woke her up. She screamed when she saw the man nearly opening the window as it wasn't locked. My dad stormed in and tried to shove the guy out or hit him with his nightstick, and my sister doesn't remember exactly, which caused the man to run off. But he only stayed away for a short time before returning to try to get in through the window in my room. He tried opening the window, but it was locked because my mom didn't want my brother and me to open it, as our bed was right up against it. My sister said I screamed as loud as I could, and my mom came in to get my brother and me while my dad ran out the front door to chase the guy, but to no avail, as the man fled through our backyard. Our backyard was situated against a small rail yard, part of the aforementioned industrial park. Between our small neighborhood and that rail yard was a dense patch of trees that always made the backyards very dark, so my dad didn't want to risk being attacked there. And instead he went back inside and called the police, and then called our elderly neighbor to make sure that they were okay while our mom took care of us kids. This is all my sister could remember from that night herself, as this happened a very long time ago. Neither of us can recall anything else after that, and the story sort of just stops there. Unfortunately, my father passed away in the hospital, so we can't ask him about it. Given everything that's happened, none of us had thought to ask our mom yet, but maybe I'll ask her soon. Last night, I awoke to the unsettling noise of loud banging and my dog's frantic barking. Living alone with my girlfriend, we had grown accustomed to our neighbors' domestic disputes, and I have to call the police often. I stumbled to the bathroom, as the walls there are thin and separated our duplex from theirs. As I approached the bathroom door, the entire house was dark, and a tall shadow was in my bathroom. I wasn't wearing my glasses, and I'm an incredibly nearsighted person, so I struggled to discern whether the shadow was merely the shadow curtain or what it was. Then the shadow spoke. I don't know what he said, but the gut-wrenching panic that I felt is still fresh in my mind. I screamed and fled to the bedroom, slamming the door behind me. My girlfriend, now awake and terrified, joined me as I dialed the police. They instructed me to lock the door, but my bedroom doesn't have one. With the banging growing louder and more aggressive, I braced myself against the door, praying that help would arrive in time. To my relief, the police arrived swiftly in only 5 minutes, and when I finally emerged from the bathroom, I found that they had dragged him, naked, from the bathtub because he had been trying to shower. They were questioning him on my couch while he was handcuffed, and he was incredibly drunk and had wandered into the wrong house. The one night that we forgot to lock the doors. There is this street dog near my college campus that I see every day. It is one of the older dogs, so it's always sleeping and very calm in general. I live very near to the college, and my friend and me usually go for a walk late at night after dinner. Tonight was no different, and we were walking around the same route. It's a residential area, so we had never felt unsafe since there was always college students or other families out in the road walking around. We were on our third lap, and this dog was sitting at its usual spot. While we were walking past it, I was gushing about how cute it is and was clearly distracted. Suddenly my friend said that there was a weird car behind us. I turned around to see that there was in fact a car driving at a really slow speed. The car pivoted towards us, which made me think that maybe it wanted to park where we were walking and might just be a random family. As I was about to convey these assumptions to my friend, we hear a dog barking and turn around to see it chasing after this car. Both me and my friend are scared of dogs, so she stood behind me, hoping that I would save her, but right when I turned around, it was the same street dog, and I knew right away that it wouldn't harm us. The car suddenly sped past us, and the dog didn't chase us or anything. Instead, it just kind of stood on guard. When we recovered from the shock, we both had the same realization that the dog might have just saved us. We still don't know if this car had any evil intentions, but the way it sped right when the dog started barking, the timing of it all was just too bizarre. Plus, it was driving so slow that both of us didn't even realize it until it was too close. Needless to say, the dog will be getting some extra pets from me every time I see it. I had just parked at the local trail that I often visit when, about 30 seconds later, an older man parked next to me. He started leaning over as if to ask for directions, and I rolled down my window, and he kept trying to peer into my car. Sensing something odd but dismissing it initially, I asked if he needed anything. He mentioned he was there for a walk and continued to glance inside my car. He then asked if I wanted company for my walk. I usually go on walks to be alone with my thoughts, so I wasn't interested, especially given his strange behavior. I politely declined and got out of my car. Despite this, he followed me and invaded my personal space, making me uncomfortable with his intense staring and proximity. Although I'm a tall man and wasn't feeling physically threatened, his behavior was very disconcerting. After walking together briefly, I excused myself, saying that I needed to use the restroom, and started walking faster to create distance. When he tried to keep up, I told him that I'd catch up later and quickly left the area, feeling uneasy. I feel a bit guilty, thinking that he might just be a lonely old man, but I believe I did the right thing. Normally, I'm not uneasy around others, but something about this interaction just felt off. Hey friends, thanks for listening. Click that notification bell to be alerted of all future narrations.